to start this new series called, as you looked in your outline, 7 Truths for Emotionally Healthy Kids. One of the guys working on it decided he changed it to 7 Truths for Healthy Emotional Kids. Or if you want to put on there, you can just say 7 Truths for Healthy Kids in an emotional way. That would be fine. Either way you want to do it. We just thought it would be a good idea for the summer for us to take a shot at how you raise your kids, the things you teach your kids. And I don't know about you. Are you like me? I love lists. How many people? If you want me to read something, just put on there 5 things that, or 7 ways that, or whatever, because, well, I may not read it, but I'll at least scan it real quickly, right? Because I'm looking for those bullet points and to see if I like what you said, if it seems to be intriguing to me, if I think it has truth to it. I love things like that because I know then what I'm looking for. And we just thought it would be a good idea for us to do this. And today we want to talk about, because it's always hard to come up with what is the foundational thing? What's the most important thing? And really, instead of working from maybe what you might think is the foundational thing, because as we worked on this first point is not the one that I would have come up with as the kind of the core one, but it's really the one that touches our lives the most, I think, and probably the one that brings about a lot of the most emotion in our lives. And so I thought it's the perfect place to start, because you'll see it in the Bible from beginning to end. You'll see this in there. And that is this: to teach your kids or work with your kids, learn to discern who loves you. Or if you, my outline says this, and we left enough room at the top of your outline if you want to add some things. My outline says, learn to discern who, and then it's written in, really loves you, right? Or you could put, learn to discern who loves you, and then you could put really, if you're just kind of skeptical about the whole thing. That's fine also. But we just thought it was a good idea to jump in, take a look at this, and especially on this one, it is so important because all of us want to be loved. And most of us understand, especially when kids come along, how important it is to love your kids. And to teach them how to look for love and how to find love and how to know the difference in what they find, whether or not this is really love or is this just something else. And it seems to me to be the one thing that we are desperate for, And as we go through life, we continue to be desperate for. Joni would tell you, my wife, that one of the things about our relationship and eventual marriage is when we met and we started going and doing things together and building a relationship. One of the things that we did not do, maybe you're like this, is we never said, "I love you" to the other person. And the reason may sound strange, but if you think about it, it makes sense. The reason was because we had said those words before, only to find out that we weren't able to back up those words. We didn't know enough. We didn't have enough experience. We didn't understand what it really, meant, because people talk about love, and we love to talk about love because it's so powerful and so deep. But we in doing it, we realized something that I put in your outline, and that is love is best understood by what love does. That there has to be an action that backs up the words, because the words lose their meaning and their power if we just say something, and maybe with good intentions, right? But we're not able, because we either don't know enough or we don't have enough strength to do it, to back those things up and stay with those things. And it's sort of the human ailment that we're not so sure. And so it was later in our dating relationship, and later as we realized we loved each other and we wanted to get married, but we still hesitated because we didn't want to say something that we weren't able to back up yet, or we weren't sure that we could back up yet. And thank goodness now we can say that, or at least I hope we can, because it's almost 40 years now. So it'd be a good thing to be able to say that we can back it up. Our kids would like it. So it's a good thing to say. I was so many love songs, and of course, there are more love songs than anything else, right? And this morning, I was even thinking, what are one of those good love songs that works for us in this? And I thought of Willie Nelson. Why? And I thought, the one I really is one of those, and it's one of the all-time greatest country western love songs, that Willie, he didn't write it, but he is the one most famous for singing it. Elvis sang it, a lot of people did. And the bottom line of the chorus goes like this. You know it. And you were always on my... And then the backup goes, you were always on my mind. And you were always on my mind. That's the way Willie would do it, right? Now, you know what? Here's what the song conveys, right? I loved you. I wanted to love you. I wanted to make this work. You were always on my mind. But the song's really about, yeah, but I had other things I was going after too. And other things that I wanted to do. But I always thought about you. You know, my intentions were, I wish that you knew how much I love you, even though I left and I took off this way and that way. And that's part of the struggle with us. And one of the things for me, maybe you know, you've never thought about this, or maybe, you know, you have. I wanted my kids to be able to discern the difference in love and what wasn't love. And that's a hard thing. Because intentions get in there and emotions get in there. And there are things that maybe you've done this. You meet somebody and you say, man, I just love this person. And the problem is they don't what? And you have to learn to recognize it by what they do, right? Because the actions don't bear out the kind of love that you're looking for, or the kind of love that you are hoping to give to someone else. And I knew if I could help my kids catch this and understand what real love was all about, and the depths of love and the foundations of love. And I know you're thinking, so are we doing a marriage? No, I think that if you just jump to marriage or romantic love, that's part of the problem in our culture and in all cultures, is we do that thinking that's what we're talking about, and we're not. We're not talking about that. We're talking about something so much deeper and more fundamental than that. And I wanted my kids to learn, because I knew they would go through heartache and struggles, and I knew that they might chase after the wrong thing at times and then have to kind of reel back from the hurt, the pain, the disappointment, the sense of betrayal, all those things that are there. And I didn't want them to give up, because I thought love was worth it. Do you? Yeah, it is worth it. And it's worth learning and growing through, and which means you're going to have to get through some, you know, heartache and pain sometime in order to help them recognize what love really is. So I thought, you know, love's best understood. It's best figured out by what love does. Now, there's this passage in the Bible, and as I had a lady at the first service, just like she's from Virginia, Leesburg, Virginia, where Josh and Suzanne Bramlett, who left here, and he's the pastor there. So she was here stealing people. And okay, it's too far to steal from churches like that, but she was here. And it's funny because one of the things that she brought up was when Josh talked about love, he talks about it in a different way than she'd heard. And he says, you know, the 1 Corinthians passage is not really about romance and couples, even though almost everyone has had 1 Corinthians read at their wedding. And just to let you know, it's not. And I told her, yeah, Josh said I got that from him, but, you know, okay. So, you know, it's not. We talked about it for years, and it's a passage about the heart of love and the depth of love. It's fine for it to be read at a wedding, you know, but then we turn that passage into some idea of romantic love, and it probably would be best used when you're talking about raising kids and loving kids, and because at the heart of it's going through exactly what we go through, how we get tricked. How we say, oh, that's it. Oh, chase after that. And then we find out, no, but that's not what really love is, and what love is really then all about. So this is from J.B. Phillips' translation, or actually his paraphrase. So this is not a translation of the Bible. It's a paraphrase. It's different. It just means, he took English versions as well as the Greek to come up with his understanding of it. But I thought Phillips' old paraphrase was really good on this one as far as understanding what the passage means. So look, this is verse number 4, 1 Corinthians 13. It says this love, the kind he's talking about, of which I speak, is slow to lose, say it with me, Yes. Now, literally, it just says love is patient. That's in the Greek. But he's trying to help you understand what that means. This kind of love that he's talking about, this love that Paul was pointing out, which was not viewed as the top, this is the kind of love you're after. He's using the common word of agape for love. He says, but this love, this foundational love, is slow to lose patience. And then here's his love is patient, love is kind. Here's his love is kind part. It looks for a way of being constructive. It looks for a way of being constructive. It's slow to lose patience, and it looks for a way through it of being constructive. And then he goes on and adds, it is not possessive. It is neither anxious to impress, nor does it cherish, catch this, it doesn't cherish inflated ideas of its own importance. And isn't it true that that's probably the most difficult part of love? Is to get past your own importance and the inflated ideas that you have about yourself, because that's one of the things that we really struggle with love. And even in parenting, we do this. Because a lot of parents, when you're talking about love, what they're talking about is, yes, I love my kids, but I love for people to look at my kids and think, what wonderful parents you must be, right? So you have to get past things like that. Because otherwise you will confuse for your child what love really is. And I put down a couple of definitions. I know I'm getting them out of order in the outline, so just to make people who run the PowerPoint stuff, make their job more difficult. But here it was my definition of patience. I think patience is that you have to adjust your pace to their pace. I told you several weeks ago I flew to California to see my granddaughter, and she's I think she's almost 10 months now. And one of the things you have to do if you're going to relate to kids, right, is you have to walk at their pace, or in this case, since she doesn't walk or crawl, you have to get down to their level. You have to find a way to relate to them, because that's what love does. And I told you a story a couple weeks ago. I had to get down the floor playing with the most simple things, just these little cups that fit inside of me. Whenever you have little kids, you probably have those. Inexpensive, multicolored, they're cool, from that standpoint, and they love them a lot more than they love the more complicated toys. So we're playing with these cups. I'm stacking them. She knocks them over. She takes them. She'll stack them, do different things. And I'm down there about 30, 45 minutes. And the problem at my age with grandparents, right, is it's not getting down on the floor. Well, if you're a grandparent, you don't know if it's easy for you, but we had to call the ambulance to get me off of, no, we didn't have to do that. We just brought in a little forklift and lifted me off the floor. And, because man, you get down there and you just become a part of the floor. It seems like it's so hard to break free. But why am I down there? Somebody says, why would you do that? Because of my granddaughter. Are you kidding me? And I know if I don't get down to her level, I cannot relate to her, or she can't understand it. So how will she understand love if it's not conveyed through the things that we do? That's how they understand it. She doesn't understand it because as a preacher, I can define love in some theological terms. She understands if I get down and I play with her. When her older sister, who is now in the bike riding stage at 7 years old, when she was little, I still remember we would walk. And one of the things I had to do is I would have to slow my pace to match her pace. That's hard because I want to walk at my pace, don't you? Especially if you're in a hurry. You're maybe an adult trying to get things done, and you don't want to be held back by the slower pace, but you slow down. Why? Because you love, right? You care. And if I take off, I will leave her behind. She will not understand it. She'll be unprotected. There are a lot of bad things that can happen. So I'm forced to, I must, if I care, change what I do, change my actions to convey to her how much I love her. And she doesn't necessarily understand that at this age, but later on she will. But I have to understand it. I have to understand that that's what it means to love. And kindness, here's my definition of kindness. Kindness is you do for them what is in their best interest. That's kindness. You're not doing what's in your best interest. You're doing for them what is in their best interest. And to me, it's so important because I know that if I don't convey this to her, if I didn't convey this to my children, then my children could become confused about what love really was. And I need to do it in a way that she would understand. I have a good friend, his name is Mike Hamlet. Knew Mike for a long time, and Mike, when he's a little older than I am, but when he got married and they had kids for the first time, I still remember, he's a preacher also, and Mike would say the only thing that could cause him to get down on the floor and to play and to forget and leave behind all the worries and stress that he carries with him normally is those kids. Exactly. It's those kids, because he loves them. And as he would say, I remember, because it was before I was married or had kids, and he would say, man, it's the greatest thing in the world. And I'm thinking as a young single guy, really? That's it, Because I'm thinking, let's go skiing. I'm thinking, that's it, yeah. In fact, even when Joni and I first take our oldest, but when she was real little, skiing, what do you think I had to do when I skied? Forget the big slopes and all that, and what was I doing? I was down on the beginner slopes, going really slow, sticking with my little one, because that was her pace in life. So here's what I want to do. Just 3 things this morning. I'm gonna move pretty quick because we're getting through a lot of stuff in the intro. But how is it that God tries to convey to us how you love? Because that's what God does. He's trying to teach us what love is all about, what He is all about, and what God is capable of. That the truth is we are not yet, but He is trying to teach us, and He's trying to teach us how to spot it, how to understand what love really is. And I just thought of 3 things this morning. First of all, He teaches us by His patience and kindness. And by His patience and kindness, He shows us that He knows us. He shows us that He knows us. He understands us. He knows what we're like. That's part of who He is and how much He loves, is that He is patient, He's kind, He's at our pace so many times because He knows us, He knows what we need, and He demonstrates this by the things that God does for us. Look, this is in what is called the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is teaching about the kingdom. He's teaching so much about who God is, and this is what He says. He says, keep on asking, and you will receive what you ask for. That's good to know, right? Because He's pushing the idea of perseverance. Don't quit. Don't give up. You've got to, when you get discouraged or things just don't work out the way you wanted them to, at first, you just keep going. You don't give up. You don't quit, because this is part of the learning process. He says, keep on seeking, and you will find. Keep on seeking. Seek and seek again. And when you get hurt and when you get disappointed, don't give up. Don't quit. Learn from it, but keep on seeking. And then He says, keep on knocking, and the door will be what? You can hear the creaking, right? You keep on knocking, and you keep going after it. He says in the next verse, for everyone who asks, say this with me. You like this, right? Everyone asks what? Everyone who seeks, and everyone who knocks, the door will be, wow, that's good stuff, isn't it? And we like that part. And as adults, I really like that part, because there are things that I'm seeking. There are things I hope to find. There are things that I hope that God opens a door, for me for. So I really like this part. And then all of a sudden, though, in this go after it, keep going, keep asking, keep seeking, this is who God is. And God, it doesn't mean that God gives us everything we want, but it sure does mean as we seek Him and go after Him, He will teach us a whole lot of what we need to know and what we need to have in our lives. And then He does this unusual, to me, that Jesus would make this jump. It just seems like a jump to me. I think it's on purpose. In the next verse, He says, you parents, whoa. Parents, what happened to seek, find, I want, I get, it's about me, right? You parents, if your children ask for a loaf of bread, do you give them a stone instead? Really? No. If they ask for a fish, would you give them a snake? Well, no, of course not. So if you, sinful people, that means we often lose our way. We often get confused. We often chase after the wrong things. We often, use words, but have not learned how to back those words up with actions. If you sinful people know how to give good gifts to your children, think about it. How much more will your Heavenly Father give good gifts to those who, say it with me, who what? See, this is all about putting that into context so you don't get it out of line. You don't misunderstand in those verses what Jesus was saying, because sometimes people do that and they take the verses and things Jesus said and you promised, and they twist it to the way that they would want it, and they would say, this is how I want these to be interpreted and what these mean, and God, you said this. And so Jesus, the reason he goes to parents and children is because what is a parent supposed to do? A parent is supposed to move at the pace of the child. You have to parent. And a parent is going to give them what is in their best interest, right? That's the role, to be trusted and to do the good thing and the right thing, and not the easy thing, not at all, not easy. Yeah, and God does that for us. He shows us by the things he does for us and that he gives us that he knows us, he understands us, he knows what is best for us. Or in Matthew chapter 19, this is what it says. It says, one day some parents brought their children to Jesus so he could lay his hands on them and pray for them. But the disciples scolded the parents with bothering him. Yeah, because the disciples decided, listen, you don't want kids in this situation because these are adult things. These are big things. Jesus is important. You don't want children kind of messing things up, showing up in the situation. And it makes sense. I understand why they would think that. We think the same thing sometimes. We don't understand. But the question is, what is God's priority? And then what should our priority be? When I was a young pastor, and so I was doing a lot of weddings, one time, and this is just true of how it works, one time Joni showed up at the back of the wedding. She was probably in the wedding or something like that, and my daughter Jamie was about this tall, and I called her Half Pint. That was her nickname. I stole it from Little House on the Prairie, but she was really a little half pint. And all of a sudden, she comes down the aisle. I'm in a robe, yeah. So I'm doing a wedding. I'm in a robe. She comes down the aisle, because she spots Dada, and so she's coming down the aisle, kind of running down the aisle in this beautiful, cute little dress. And of course, a lot of people would think this is inappropriate, and what is she doing here? Until they notice down the side aisle comes this guy in a robe, right down the side aisle, to go down on his knees and grab and pick up his little girl. Yeah, I did that because it's my girl. And she can interrupt things. She's that important. She's interrupted ever since. She's just continued, so she might listen to this one online. I'll get in trouble. But, so that's what you do with your kids, right? They're your kids. And what they learn, I'm not saying that, that there aren't things that cannot be interrupted. There are. But, for the most part, the priority of who they are is so huge. Why? Because you love them so much. Yes, you do. And so you stop what you're doing to change your pace and change your height and be at their level, because that's how much they mean and how much you want to. I'm sure you're like this, just like I was. You want them to get it. Because they have to get it. They have to understand. If there's anything they've got to understand more than anything else, it's how to spot real love in life. How to spot that. They need to spot that, in life. Or here's the second point number 2. God teaches us because he would not stop loving us. And I love this because, there are just times where if you're like me, and listen, I don't blame people. I understand when they go through it and they just say, yeah, I've tried and I've tried and I've tried and I've loved and I've loved, but I'm just worn out. I can't love anymore. I can't try anymore. And I do understand that. But let me tell you, when it comes to my kids, that's not in the vocabulary. That's just not there. Because they will do the wrong thing. Your kids will mess up. Your kids will even reject you sometimes, and you cannot stop. God did not stop. Think about it. He did not stop. We aren't followers of Jesus Christ because we're such good people. And I know that goes against the lines mostly of culture. And I understand why people want to believe, though, that we're people that are so wonderful and so good. And if you just see the good in us, I understand. But the struggle is we aren't believers and followers of Jesus Christ because we're such good people. We're followers because God would not stop. He would not quit. He cared so much that even when we spurned his love, when we said, don't want anything to do with it, got my own plan, got my own agenda, I'm going to do what I want, God continued to try to find a way to convey his love to his kids. He just wouldn't quit. He would not stop. In fact, here's a great verse. This is later on in John's Gospel, chapter 13. He said it was almost time for the Jewish Passover feast. Jesus knew that it was time for him to leave this world and go back to the Father. So he had always loved those who were his own in the world, and he loved them all the way to the what? To the end. Yes, and he did. Because even when it cost him his life, even when he is being rejected by the people that he is showing love to, he still loved them to the end. He would not stop. He would not quit loving his own. Yeah. And it's important because your kids need to understand that that is God's love and that that's what love looks like and that's what love does. Jesus, one time, his disciple, one of them kind of confronted him with this idea. Maybe you've thought about this too. How many times do I have to forgive? I mean, this forgiveness thing, and when you get spurned and you get, rejected, how many times do I have to forgive? And he came up with a great answer himself. He said, 7 times? Does that sound like a lot to you? Yeah. 7 times? Are you kidding me? Yeah, 7 times. And Jesus said, well, how about, the answer? What was Jesus' answer? He said, how about 70 times 7? Now, the disciples were smart enough to go, that's 490 times. Are you kidding me? 490 times I have to forgive. I have to try again and try again and try again and try again. They don't get it. 490 times. I'm not even sure I can keep track of it. And Jesus, it's not in there. I know I'm paraphrasing. Jesus, I'm sure, was going like, you get the point, right? I don't want you to keep track of it. Stop keeping track of it. Start loving. Start deciding that this is the way God loves, so I'm going to love to the end as best I can. Flawed, I can't do it like he does, but I'm going to try to learn to love the way he loves. So instead of keeping track of all these times I was offended and all these times that I feel like, someone did me wrong, whatever, instead of that, start pursuing and chasing the way God himself, the way he chases. Yeah, it's exactly what he was talking about. Exactly what he was trying to communicate to us. And then how about this third one? By his love, he also taught us what love was not. Ooh. Yeah, and see, so if you learn to love, and if you and I can learn to love the way God loves, and God can teach us to discern what real love is, what it really is, then what happens is, as we pursue real love in our lives and we pursue to love the way he loves, that means you also will reject what real love is not. And that won't always go over well with people. But by nature, when you choose one, you are not choosing the other. You are rejecting the other. And this is exactly what God does. And it's not because God is trying to say, I don't care about people, but it doesn't mean that God will do things the way we want him to do them. Instead, he does them the better way. He does the better way for us, the caring way for us. But it means that he will kind of pull away from the other ideas. I know that, and I even talked to some parents between services, most Christian parents really struggle with this one idea, is the idea of discipline. And I'm not telling you that discipline is not a part and not really important. We're going to get to that, not today, but discipline. But they emphasize discipline so much that they fail to communicate adequately to their children sometimes how much they care about who they are. Because discipline is only part of the equation. It's only part of how you work. In fact, if you don't put your discipline in the context of I'm never going to quit, I'm never going to give up because I love you and I care for you, and I'm going to continue to love you and do what is best for you, and I'm going to continue to get where you are on your level. If you don't put it in that context, then discipline is often ineffective because they end up rejecting the discipline. In fact, this is in Colossians. This is a really good verse where Paul is actually talking to the Colossians about marriage and all kinds of things. He jumps in here and he says this in verse 21. He says, fathers, don't overcorrect your children. What? Yeah, don't overcorrect your children. But don't overcorrect your children, or they will grow up feeling inferior and frustrated. There's a point where they don't understand, and you can overcorrect on everything, and what happens is the child doesn't know, am I really loved? Am I really care about? It just becomes confusing to them. If God corrected on everything that we failed on all the time, well, we'd be here for a long time, wouldn't we? I mean, it's just, it'd be overwhelming. But God shows patience. And God shows, what was that other word again? Kindness. Yeah. It doesn't mean he quits. It just means God understands that unfortunately there's a way that you could convey something else. When with my daughter, especially when she came along, part of my goal was I knew I could not love her as much as God loved her. But I wanted to show her what it looked like that someone really loved her and cared for her, as much as I could come up with. And I would tell her, I'm doing this so that you will understand as best I can show you what real love looks like, so that there'll be a day coming where someone, you love somebody, but they don't love you the same way, or someone has decided, to say something or act like something that they don't really mean, so that you could say and you would understand that's not really love. And so that if they don't treat you a certain way, because I would treat my daughter a certain way, so that if they don't treat you a certain way, you could fall back on the idea of how Dad loved me and treated me, and you could look and say, no, I'm not going to be treated that way, because you knew what love really was. And see, if you learn that, if you understand that, then it's not unloving to tell someone no. I know what you're saying, but this is not true. And the things that you're doing do not convey love to me, not the way I've been taught to understand what real love is. And so they walk away from that. And it's a protection from them to understand what real love is all about. There's a guy named Ross Campbell, Dr. Ross Campbell, and he wrote a book, and this book is primarily called How to Really Love Your Child. And then he's got another one called How to Really Love Your Teenager. And the book is primarily about, with Christian couples, how we struggle so much with the balance between discipline and the compassionate part of love, and trying to work through that. And this is what he says in his book. He says, if I love them only when they meet my requirements or expectations, they will feel, this is a good word, they will feel incompetent, not capable. They will believe it is fruitless to do their best because it is never enough. Insecurity, anxiety, low self-esteem will plague them. Those feelings will be constant hindrances in their emotional and their behavioral growth. Yeah, and that's what you don't want to convey. Even in your correction, you want them to know that you still care and that you still love them. I still remember when Johnny and I were young parents, listening to Focus on the Family, and when they were talking about make sure with your young children that your correction and your discipline is age appropriate. They didn't mean by, how you discipline. They meant when you discipline. Because if you've got a child not capable of understanding what you're talking about or capable of doing that, then to discipline them only seems to them to be unfair, and it doesn't communicate well, and they become frustrated in life. Because let's face it, as we're growing up, there are certain things we're just not really capable of, right? I still have a little ways to go, all right? And you want to make sure that they understand that you understand, and your discipline does not counteract the love and compassion that you want to show. This is my definition, or just my statement here on competence, because I love the fact that he said, that idea, because it is competence for us. And am I competent to love? So this is what I wrote. Competence does not mean to me that through me they will experience perfect, unconditional love. It's not what it means to me. And the reason I say this is because I'm not capable of that. I'm still trying to learn what that is. I know God is capable of that, but I'm not. So I'm not thinking through me they will understand what perfect, unconditional love is. But through me, my hope with my kids is that they will see what it is like when someone really wants to love them. I mean, really wants to love them. And is willing to try as best they can to back it up with actions, to follow through on that wanting to love them, so that they would not become confused about what love is. I brought a book with me, and this one, I probably should have put the quotes in there. I decided not to use them, then I changed my mind in the middle of the night. So this is a new book. It just came out from the publisher. I'm not even sure you can get it. I got it from the publisher because I'm special. And so I paid more money. And so it's by a guy named Voddie Baucham, and it's called Fault Lines. And the book is actually about current. Voddie's really smart, very well educated. He's an educational type of person. And it's really about new culture and a lot of things going on in culture, including critical race theory and things like that. So he wrote it. But one of the things I wanted to read for you, because I thought was so good, is Voddie knew that it was important that you understand as the reader about him, who he is, his life. And so he actually has a whole chapter about growing up and everything that he went through. And I love this, because this will tell you so much about who he is, understanding who raised him. He was raised by his mom, single parent, and she took on being a single parent, not abandoning her kids, but doing the opposite. And this is what he says. He says, "My mother shaped my thinking about who I am and what I was capable of. She never said or did anything to cause me to believe that my blackness, because he's black, was a curse or a limitation. She gave me a sense of agency and accountability." Two great words in there. A sense of agency and accountability that remains with me to this day. She did this, catch this, 4 things he said. She did this by advocating for me, by protecting me, by disciplining me, and by sacrificing for me. Wow. She was my advocate. She was my protector. She was my disciplinarian, yes. And she was also the one who sacrificed for me. And then later down in another paragraph, he says this. This will help understand his mom. "My mom was a tough, smart, hardworking, no-nonsense woman who did not suffer fools." I like that. I think that's great. In other words, she wasn't going to put up with not learning and not growing. She says, growing up, there were 2 things I never doubted. Number 1, my mother loved me. And number 2, if I got out of line, she would kill me. So, I like that. And, of course, he's just kidding. He's not, but he understood how much she loved him, and she was willing to do whatever it took to teach him about love and what love was really all about. Here's what John would later write in 1 John. He writes, "See what great love the Father has lavished on us." Don't you like that word? He has lavished this love on us. I mean, it's just more than just poured out. I mean, he has lavished this love. Growing up, I just think about going to the beach, and my mom would lavish. She would slather sunscreen on us because I was redheaded and fair skinned, right? She's covering me with it as a way of protecting me. See what great love the Father has lavished. He's slathered on us that we should be called children of God. That's because we are his kids. And we know we're his kids because he has lavished his love on us. He says, and that is what we are. The reason the world does not know us is that the world did not know him. See, and the reason you might not know or understand, and I don't know him either, I've met him once, Vodi Bakum, is because you don't know his mom. And the reason the world does not know us or understand us is because the world does not know our dad. And the world doesn't understand that kind of love. The world does not understand what it means to love and not just give someone what they want and they call the shots and they run the show. It doesn't understand what love is that says, but I have a higher idea and a higher responsibility to how they turn out than even they do because they don't know enough. They haven't learned enough yet. And that God would love us, lavish on us that kind of love that doesn't always give us what we want, but tries to teach us what we need to know, what is best for us, and is patient in trying to love us and teach us those things. As a Christian, the world around you will not understand you. They cannot understand you. And your definitions of love should not come from the world around you. Your definitions of love should come from the Father, who is the parent, who knows his kids. He knows what they're like. He knows what they need. He is the one that stays with them. And let me tell you why. Because when the world leaves you, the Father will not. He will not. He will not quit. He will not give up. He's proved that by the sacrifice that Jesus made. We're going to celebrate the Lord's Supper and what he did for us. And if you want to, I have my little pre-opened packet here. And if you're online that you want to grab something and celebrate with us, because this is something that the church for 2,000 years has continued to remember and celebrate, only as a way of remembering how much love God actually has always had for us. That he would not quit. He kept on. He gave it the life of his son. Here we are 2,000 years later, and we're looking back and realizing that's the kind of love that drew us to the Father. It's always the kind of love that draws us to the Father through everything else that we go through. It is his love for us that changes the heart. And when we understand it and we're able to act like his children, we got a long way to go still, right? But when we're able to act like that, the world at least catches some kind of idea that there is a God and a Father who does care. So Jesus gathered with his disciples, knowing they wouldn't fully understand it. They had a lot to learn. And he gathered for Passover, and he takes the Passover bread and he breaks it, but he gives it a new meaning, definition, based on who he is and his love for them, the sacrifice that he would make their behalf, taking their sins upon himself. So this is the bread that came out of heaven. It's not as your fathers ate and died. He said, he who eats this bread will live forever. And we know at the end of the meal, there was a cup that was passed. That was one of several, but there was one at the very end of the meal, and Jesus took that cup and he gave it a new meaning, because this was going to be the culmination of what he was teaching them as he would go to the cross and he would pour out his own life, his blood for them, but it would give them life. It would set them free, forgiveness of their sins. So John would later write, the same guy, later he writes, if we walk in the light as he himself is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of his son cleanses us from all our sins. Heavenly Father, we thank you. You do know us. In fact, you really know us better than we know ourselves. And Lord, often we wander off into foolishness, and we often think we've got it figured out, and so we'll do things our way, only to be drawn back and pulled back by your love when it doesn't work out. And Father, you know what's coming ahead that we don't know. Because of it, we trust you that you would teach us what we need to know not just now, but what we need to know tomorrow, because you are a Father who loves His children. If you're here and you've never given your heart to Jesus Christ, maybe you just have gone through life and enough hurt and pain that you're just not sure there's anything or anyone to believe in. I understand. We all do. People will let you down. Definitely this broken, mixed up world will let you down, if not take advantage of you. But there's a Father who loves you, who gave His Son's life to prove that you could trust Him. Jesus didn't give His life to take advantage of you. He gave His life for your good, to rescue you. You've never opened up your heart to Him. It is a matter of, by faith, saying, Lord, I don't understand it all. I don't know why I even chase the things that I do, but I do believe I'm looking for something, and you are that thing I'm looking for. So, Lord Jesus, if you're willing to live a perfect life, then offer that life in exchange for my broken life. I want that. Come live inside of me. Teach me. Show me a new way of life. I believe in you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.